A very warm welcome to everyone. Good to see you all. And I don't think it's too late to wish you all a happy new year, even though we're now in February, but it's the first time that many of us have seen each other. So a very happy new year to everybody. This 2 days is we're going to finish off all of the, I guess you could call them the taught pieces of the diploma, to allow time on the next 2 labs to do our practice and experimentation groups. And I suppose when we say taught pieces, these are the pieces that are the most interactive in some ways. And we had been holding them back in the hope that maybe one day we might actually get together, but COVID has so far prevented that from happening. So these 2 days will be some of the more interactive aspects, which to date we've always done in the room. And for all of them, I think this is the first time we'll have done them remotely or virtually. So it's very experimental. So you're more than welcome. It's good to see you all. Looking forward to 2 labs together. So the purpose of this lab or these 2 labs is to help us work with the dynamics in the room. So very much, I suppose, in the bottom left-hand corner of the 5 disciplines model, the co-creating model, but also the team learning piece as well, helping the team with the team coach work with the dance and introduce a number of practices and use them in our own practice. So there's a sort of a twofold purpose to this. One is learning how to use them, but also using them to learn about our own process as a learning community. To explore how we can help the team understand its own dynamic using timeouts, or as Barry Oshry calls them, toots, looking at the different types of toots or timeouts, what impact they might have, and trying them out. We're also going to look at how to practice and apply a process for helping the team identify and see its own systemic patterns. So the loops that it gets into, how one behavior affects another behavior, and we get caught in these systemic loops, and how we can begin to interrupt them. And tomorrow we're going to look at how to help, often as team coaches, we're facilitating the team to do something that it hasn't been able to do to date, which is often to surface the unspoken things that are held in the team and give voice to the system. So we'll do an exercise around that tomorrow morning. So just a brief overview of the day. This morning we'll look at timeouts, sometime in small groups after we do a check-in. We'll have a break at 10:20, and then we'll do something after our break called a floating team sculpt, something which we have always done in the room. And it's a great exercise for looking at our team dynamic, our group dynamic. This afternoon, we'll look at, in small groups, what am I learning about how we can help the team learn through timeouts and team sculpts, and finish up with a plenary discussion. Then tomorrow, we'll look at the secrets exercise, how to bring the unspoken into the room and how we use that with teams. And then after the break in the morning, we'll look at those system loops, those causal loops, and how teams get hooked into behaviors that affect other behaviors. And then we'll have some social time and breakout groups before we finish off at 1 o'clock. So we always do a check-in, and our check-in this morning is based around this sentence completion. I've been doing some reading recently of an Israeli coach supervisor called Muli Lahad, and he has a lovely list of sentence completions, which are maybe a wee bit different from one word to summarize how you're feeling this morning. And one of them is, I would like to give you. So maybe if we could take 30 seconds or so and just think about this. I would like to give you. See what it brings up for us, and when we're ready, let's just check in with completing this sentence. I would like to give you, and we will, as the faculty, we'll participate in this as well. So let's have a moment for 30 seconds. Think about I would like to give you, and then when we're ready, I'll just let you know when 30 seconds is up and we will start. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen just so that we can see each other and have a think for 30 seconds. Okay, 30 seconds. So when you're ready, I would like to give you.
I can make a start. I would like to give you the energy from my winter snowed in walk and the cocooning sense of not having to be anywhere because there's no travel. The energy of my dad, it's my late dad's birthday today, so his passion for life. And it's also Candlemas, which is related to a pagan ritual about this is the day when life returns. And January has been pretty difficult. So that's what I'd like to give you all.
Thanks, Brian. I'll go next. I'd like to give you all a hug.
I'll go next. Simply from me, I'd like to give you my gratitude and thanks for being here today.
I can go. I'd like to give you my presence and my compassion.
I can go next. I like to give you my happiness and the feeling of happiness that I'm with you and that we are all well.
I'd like to go next, and I'd like to give you the clarity that I feel that I can see today in this thin Nordic sunshine.
I'd like to give you my energy and positivity today.
I'd like to give you my full attention and sense of hope for the future.
I'd like to give you my commitment to our work together and my calmness.
I would like to give you my loving energy and calm presence.
I would like to give you my thanks for what has been a difficult year, and you've all been very present and a big part of that community to get me through. So thank you.
I'll go next. I'd like to give you my hugs, and at the same time, happy to see all of you.
I'd like to give you my increasing sense of happiness as I listen to your contributions.
I would like to give you a little bit of that.
I'd like to give you my sense of hope and optimism.
I'd like to give you my positive energy.
I would like to give you calmness, joy, and light in these dark days.
Yeah, I'd like to give you my energy, creativity, and support.
I would like to give you touch and playfulness.
Yeah, I'd like to give you a moment to breathe, a moment to take some space. And as I'm looking out the window, I'd like to give you a really bright blue sky and the feeling of sunshine on your skin. which is not what is out there, by the way.
I would like to give you the things that Alex and Sally said, so hope and positivity and mischievousness. Today, I would like to give you some mischievousness, if that's the word.
I'd like to give you my dogged determination to see humour in every Groundhog Day.
I'd like to give you a sense of fun and lightness and enjoyment to carry us through the next few hours.
I'd like to give you a big smile.
I'd like to give you a high five for getting to this point, nearly a year later from when we first met.
Yeah.
You do that.
I was really trying to keep count there. Is anyone still to go?
Yes, I would like to give you my silent but active curiosity and joyful expectation of the changes that are currently unfolding.
Thank you.
Yeah, and me too. I'd like to give you undivided attention and a sense of hope.
Thank you, Julia.
Yes, Julia.
Wow. Wow. That was fantastic. Wow. Thank you so much. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Neil. Is that correct?
I think it actually is me. So in the mischievous going forward, let me just hold on. Let's just a moment's silence as we breathe in those wonderful gifts that we've all received. And I jiggle with the slides. Okay. So as John said, we're going to start the morning talking about this wonderful area of timeouts. And we've been referring to these, I think, probably during the last year, and we've been doing some practice. And of course, it became quite figural when we were looking at the Oshri. But we wanted to give this some particular focus, and in a way, this is a bit of a new addition to the diploma, because of the importance to us as team coaches of being able to intervene at the moment of learning for the team. And in particular, as we start to think about timeouts and how confident we are in taking them and how we need to expand our repertoire and all of that, I'd like you to consider the whole question of taking timeouts as we work with the team, alongside the team in its business as usual work, as well as taking timeouts when we're doing the more kind of inverted commas offsite or workshop type of work with them. Because certainly my experience is a lot of the most significant learning for a team happens when we do work alongside them in a business as usual meeting, and we're able to intervene at the moment that something happens, because this is where we really help a team test whether its intentions to work differently are actually borne out in practice. So rather than take you through the content and stuff that we have in terms of slides to start with, we'd like you to get into some smaller groups and just share your experience. So we're going to do this for 15 or 20 minutes while I've checked the time and where we are. But we asked you, I think Moira in the pre-work asked you to reflect on your experience of taking time out, where do you notice actually this is an opportunity, and how far do you actually take those opportunities, and where do you maybe avoid or think now's not the time? So where are you confident? Where could you be better? What's your learning edge? And what are your questions about taking time out and working in this way? And we'd like you in your small groups to come back to the main group in after your conversations with your top 2 questions, and we will listen to your questions and then answer them as we work through the content of the slides. So I'm just doing a time check. We need to be back at 9:40 in here. So checking with Neil.
Yep, so we've got 7 rooms set up, mainly 3s, a couple of 4s ready to open.
Okay, so should we put this question in the I think it's pretty straightforward, isn't it, guys? Is where are you good? What's your learning edge? And what are your top 2 questions coming back? If you want to take a shot of those questions, please do, or you can refer to your own slides. Let's just stop share. Everyone okay?
Just popped it in the chat box there,
Thanks,
Hilary,
John.
for you.
Great.
Everyone okay with going and seeing some colleagues? Okay. See if we'll call you back at 22:10. So Robert's group, was it Chris and Claire? Anything to add?
Yeah, there was just one around when you're in observer mode, like in the inquiry phase, and you're maybe observing an exco, is it appropriate to toot or to contract to toot, or should you just be a fly on the wall at that stage of the journey?
Yeah.
And then also, how are relations in tooting and potentially embarrassing the CEO? And of course, it's data we're giving, and yet, for example, culturally, there's all that at play.
So what's the question, Claire?
I suppose it's back to contracting again. What's a way to ensure the contracting is so clean that we can toot, even if it, for want of a better word, implicates anyone in the team? I really hate the word implicate.
Hilary, if it helps, we had a similar question that kind of builds on that from our group.
Yeah.
Which was, how and when is it appropriate to maybe call out observations or noticing individual behavior without, as you said, embarrassing, shaming, but actually knowing that it is part of the dynamics of the team? So do you ever do that, I suppose, was the question. Kind of builds on where I think Claire was going, because Alex mentioned about sometimes that is the power dynamics that is influencing some of that individual behavior. But when is it okay to do a toot, to pull out, call out or observe individual behavior that's impacting the team dynamics?
Lovely. Okay. Great.
And then our second one was, well, there's 2 more actually. One was kind of, how do you really do a toot well, but keep the flow going of the whole session? So managing kind of that. And then we had one more, which was really about the so what of tooting. So what is the so what? What is the purpose beyond just that moment to pause, the time to pause in the moment? Because it feels like there's such aha moments, but how do they get the most from them?
How do you really help embed the learning?
Yes, rather than it just being a moment in time that you seem to sort of then just move on from.
Yeah. And that will probably depend on what type of toot it is and why you've intervened, but yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So what other questions do we have? You're building on what we've had already. Are there any still around? Hi, Jessica, yeah.
Yeah, we had 3 questions, but here are our top 2 then. Is there a difference between an intervention and a timeout?
Oh.
And then the other question is, are we as coaches more wired for the negative things in the room and then consequently do a timeout? Or how about the positive things?
That sounds like a personal question, but yeah, it's an interesting point. It's an interesting point. How much do we actually give feedback on the positive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Now, Davo, did you wave?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to jump in on for our group. So it was a question that really that came up because of a discussion around the experience, and there's this question around how best to toot when you've only got a very limited amount of time left in a meeting that you're part of. For instance, you know, you might be at minute 50 or so of a 60-minute meeting, and you know everyone's rushing off. To give it real value, to give the toot real value, when you know there is only very limited time. So it's a very poorly formed question, but hopefully you recognise the question in that. So how best to handle that, perhaps, I think is the gist of it. Is that okay, Vic? Is that okay, Debs?
Yeah, we had sort of 2 sub-questions. How do you right size the toot for the time available? And what process can you inject into the team to help them handle that toot, rather than just being met with a wall of confusion or wanting to run off somewhere or
It's not just left hanging.
Yeah.
And generatively, there's something there also about when you're tooting, but someone interjects. So what way to manage the toot?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So is there any other, I'll take 1 or 2 more burning questions, and then we'll see how we get with opening up these for exploration and looking at the materials.
I think there was a discussion in our group, which was just something about the timing, that sometimes you can be an observer to a particular dynamic. You kind of get a feeling about something and you're busy trying to perhaps make sense of it, work it out, and then the moment's passed, but it feels important. And then you're busy trying to work out the toot. There was something about how we articulate what we're feeling and what we're observing into an impactful toot in the moment.
Okay, so yeah, please hold these questions. Let's move and we'll pick other stuff as we go through. And if I think both Neil and I have noted these, so if we don't address them, please shout. Shall we go into your first piece, Neil?
Indeed. So just putting the slides up. So we're talking first of all about what you can do in advance of tooting, and I guess, Robert, this speaks to the issue you raised straight away about contracting and preparation. So obviously there's a real need to contract and to do that multiple times. So you may be contracting right at the beginning of the assignment and saying that tooting will be part of your suite of interventions. You may be specifically contracting there for the fact that you'll be tooting during business as usual meetings. So I think this is something that a client will quite often assume you're going to be coming along and running specific workshops. So kind of contracting for attending their business as usual meetings, and then clarifying that the role that you'll play there, doing that up front, and then doing it again when you attend those meetings. So you're doing it with the team leader, with the sponsor, and with the team themselves. And I think there's a real need at the beginning of those team meetings to be very clear about what the role is that you're taking, how you're going to, the mechanics of it, how you're going to interject, and what it is you're going to do as a toot. And I think part of the value of that is to calm some of the preconceptions some people might have that, oh, hang on, we're being observed in the way that a consultant might observe us, and they're going to tell us what we're doing wrong, and they're going to be telling us how we can do it better, and do we really need that? So you've got a whole load of kind of creation of psychological safety and getting that contracting right at the beginning. And then thinking about the different, what you might call modes of observation that you might adapt. So on the one hand, you've got your thinking mode. So bearing in mind, what is it you know that they're already working on? Like, well, as Hilary said, there may be particular intentions the team has discussed about how they should work together. You may have shared particular models with them already. So you may be using those as a framework, but also what preparation can you do to get into the right state of being so that you're going to be able to really sit back, be in the gallery rather than the dance floor, fully observe. How can you make sure that you're going to be really present to what's happening in the moment? How can you manage your natural inclination to judge and label and interpret, I guess, the motivations behind how people are behaving? And how necessary is it going to be for you to draw on your API, your authority, your presence, your impact in the most appropriate way? Are you going to need to be quite authoritative to take those moments to step in? How can you ensure you're fully present? How can you manage your impact? And because the way you're showing up with your API recipe in this situation, or your balance of API, may be quite different in other sessions where you're more in the front or actively participating in the conversation. And then the doing side of it. So the thinking, the being, the doing, how are you actually going to manage the mechanics of it? How are you going to contract with them about when you signal that you're going to give a timeout? And are there particular frameworks that you may be referring to?
Yeah. Neil, I think it's worth just mentioning way back, probably in May, when we talked through the facilitator map, and we talked about the first stage of that map, that cycle of steps was about being able to stand actually naked in front of the data, really help us to calm ourselves and be able to tune in. I think that very much links to this whole piece about how do we listen to our body reacting. In order to do that, we have to calm our own chatter and really attend to our body. And the only way of doing that is to develop mindfulness and body awareness practices over time to enhance your ability to tune in. I think the other thing about contracting is, ideally, it's really important that you don't shame or upset or irritate the team leader who may well be leading a session. So ideally, you will have contracted with him or her that you will be able to call out behavior or patterns that you see as potentially hindering the effectiveness of the team process. And don't underestimate the importance of the conversation that helps them be prepared for that. It can't be hurried. It needs to be explicit. Are they really willing for this? If they are, then fantastic. You're then able to coach live the relationship between the team leader and the team. Equally, the conversation with the team is really important. They know what to expect. Sorry.
And you may also, as this was one of the questions about, with the team leader, you may also be making a judgment that there are some things, particularly if you've contracted, as I would, to have separate one-to-one coaching with the team leader. There may be some things that you choose to take back into a one-to-one coaching conversation with the team leader rather than exploring in front of the group. And there may be some things which are particularly helpful to have a conversation with the group about at the same time.
Yeah. And the best way of giving them an idea of what it will feel like to be, as it were, tutored, is to do it in your offsite session. Help, set up a conversation where they are talking amongst themselves and you do it, and then you'll be able to show them what it looks like. So when you do it in business as usual, it doesn't become such a surprise.
Can I call a timeout?
Yeah.
We were asked whether we ever do a positive toot. So I'm noticing, Hilary and Neil, how you're very deftly weaving in answers to the questions in conveying the content.
Thank you, Moira.
Thank you, Moira.
Over to you, Neil.
So you could describe what we've just been talking about as your directive cognitive awareness and also your undirected sensory awareness. So, your cognitive, your rational thinking. Of course, this is a really super valuable function of our prefrontal cortex. Our thoughts, our analysis, our judgment even is always going to be really useful in these things. But how do you hold that lightly? So, I always have quite a strong reaction when people talk about, being fully non-judgmental, because I genuinely don't believe the human brain is capable of being non-judgmental. Our brains are pre-designed to make judgments. The trick for us as coaches is how we can recognize that we're making a judgment and know that it isn't the truth. It is just a hypothesis. And I think as thoughts occur to you, having that dialogue in your head that goes, okay, this is interesting. So actually I have a kind of a theory building that maybe this is what's going on, but it is only just a theory. It may be the reality of the situation may be hugely different. So your experience and your knowledge is valuable and should be held lightly. And there may be particular models that you're bringing into play that will provide a useful framework. So as you're developing that shared language with a team, because you've perhaps been through a few models like Lencioni, then those become a kind of a shortcut to expressing particular ideas that become increasingly familiar and become part of their lexicon as a team. But then with your undirected sensory awareness, I think, I certainly find that my automatic tendency in the moment, particularly in the kind of pressure of sitting amongst the team, is to be in the cognitive space a lot. I'm trying to rationalize it and understand it and interpret it. So I have to make a concerted effort to remind myself to then pull back into the undirected sensory awareness. And Hilary said just then that, that it's used the word mindfulness. And I think this is a great way of framing it. How can you prepare both before a session and during a session to catch the fact that you may well be much more in that cognitive space and bring yourself out of it? And the simple solution for that 9 times out of 10 is to go into your felt body experience. So, taking your attention down into your body, noticing what you feel, noticing what your senses are picking up, going through a checklist of your sensitive, what senses, what am I hearing at this moment? What am I seeing at this moment that might be different? Or perhaps even going into a heart and gut inquiry. What's my heart telling me about what's happening in this room? What's my gut telling me? And seeing what different information comes up. And of course you see the word intuition on this slide, and I think often what we can call intuition is a mass of data that our senses are picking up in all kinds of ways that just aren't conscious, but our body is reading that data and helping us respond to what's going on. So can you flip that switch from cognitive into sensorial to inquire in a very different way and flip back and forwards throughout that meeting? And that's a lot of self-management, self-regulation.
Yeah, and I think that question about are we more wired for the negative is an interesting one there. And it's it's really useful to check in on ourselves and to see whether we are a bit caught up with the negative, and to notice actually a positive, showing appreciation for what you're seeing is also an important part of this type of intervention. There you see, I've said it's a type of intervention, so that's interesting. I think the difference between intervention and a toot probably is that a toot is time bound. An intervention could be a new thing that you do with a team, but a toot is a time bound piece, a time out of time that you step into and then go out of again. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, and also building on that, Hilary, you know, in the handout where we've got the text from one of Peter's blogs where he talks about the nudges, and the nudges are very much an input from you as a coach, saying, you know, prompting people to think about timeline, prompting people to think about stakeholder, prompting the group to consider, are they, is what they're discussing explicitly enough aligned with strategy? Whereas the other form of toot is literally an observation, a non-judgmental observation of what you're seeing occurring in the room at that time, particularly around the dynamic with the team. Which leads nicely into this. So just an example, you know, a list of examples of the kind of things we might be looking at. So the first one is perhaps the more transactional stuff, like just how well run and managed is this meeting? Have they got a clear agenda? Are they managing the time well? Are they doing all the requisite things in terms of actually getting to some point in decision making, being clear about actions, etc.? But then more on the actual interactions and the patterns of interactions and communication within the team. So what we might call team cohesion, you know, are they operating very well as a team with everyone playing equal roles and balancing support and challenge, or do they appear to be splitting into subgroups or pairings? You know, are there sides that seem to occur where perhaps, you know, there's one group of people who are always positing one point of view and other people who are taking a more adversarial position against it? What's the tone of the dialogue? You know, how collaborative does it feel? How participative is everyone being? But also, what's the balance between the level of constructive conflict and people really building on each other's ideas and presenting information as theories or ideas to be explored and having robust conversations about it, versus are they in the habit, as an awful lot of teams I've worked with are, of playing very nicely together when they're in a room, and, you know, people not wanting to upset each other, and then actually you can see as soon as they're walking out of the room, they're kind of splitting off and having side conversations and saying the things that they actually didn't say in the moment. And I worked with a team last year in particular who were, a lot of my observations were around their deviation from agenda and strategy, because they just loved going down the rabbit holes of detail. So, you know, constantly conversations would go straight into this kind of very, very kind of micro detailed analysis of something that had come up, which was a huge comfort space for them all, because they were very data driven individuals, but they were repeatedly completely losing track of the agenda that they'd set themselves.
So I'm conscious in terms of our time, Neil, that we've got 15 minutes left for.
Yeah, so these last couple of slides here are really sort of kind of checklists of things you might be thinking about. So I won't talk you through this. There's plenty of information on the internet, obviously, about what good meetings look like. We had a conversation as a faculty of like, how much would we share something like this and arguably go into a bit of a trainer mode with the team versus just holding a framework in our own mind. So we've got a sense in our own heads of what good meetings might look like that we might be using as a reference point when we're tuting about what we're observing with the team.
And we do have a handout, which I think we haven't sent out yet, which we can make available to you.
But then just explaining a little bit more about this kind of discussion versus dialogue, you know, so a lot of what you tend to see in meetings, and particularly in more senior meetings, is this sort of discussion style of communication where people will posit a point of view. I think that we should, even if it's an idea that's just occurred to someone. So it's very much about come up with a point of view, assert it, someone's going to win or someone's going to lose, who's going to have pushed their idea through. Versus a sort of what we might call a more dialogic form of conversation, which is a genuinely generative dialogue where people are positing ideas, but they are framed as ideas. They're interested in feedback. They build on each other's thoughts. They interrogate each other's thinking. They collectively come to something which is far greater than which is an accumulation of all of the parts of the team rather than individual people kind of battling to get particular ideas through. And you might also just find this useful in terms of thinking about the patterns of dialogue that you might be noticing, and in particular, does a lot of the conversation seem to be filtered backwards and forwards to the team leader? Is that because, are you noticing that members of the team will tend to address the team leader rather than each other? And perhaps is the team leader automatically taking quite a dominant role where they're the one who keeps asking questions and making statements for other people to react to? Versus on the right-hand side, is there a lot of discussion between individuals and across, and much more of a sort of a matrix communication?
Or any other form of dance that you might have observed?
So you might find it helpful to take an observation chart in to kind of quickly note some of the behaviors that you might be looking out for if this is particularly the kind of thing you're looking at. And this again is just an example of both kind of positive behavior that you might want to acknowledge, people building on each other, inquiring from each other, taking the view, meta view themselves by stepping back and commenting on the process, or the less helpful behavior of interrupting or not contributing. You might do this. Personally, I would prefer to hold this in my head, because I think this is going, it might draw me much more out of the sensory awareness side, but can be a useful tool. And you could build your own version of something like this as a checklist of things you want to look out for that are particularly useful to that team.
Yeah.
Neil, it's Ian. Can I just ask, you made a statement there, negative behavior of interrupting. But there is a positive side to that, when somebody might be reframing or just setting something up for the team in an interruption.
Yeah. So I guess what I would be looking out for is a pattern of. So absolutely, I hear what you're saying, that there can be, it can be helpful at certain times, particularly if someone's talking for a very long time and everyone's getting confused. On the other hand, you might have someone who consistently interrupts and talks over people, and that might be something that's useful to bring to people's attention.
Yeah, thanks, Eric, because there is a distinction, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks.
You might want to actually break that down into reframing and cutting across, or to be a bit more fine-tuning. And I would probably use this type of observation chart in the inquiry phase, because at that stage I haven't contracted with the team about what it wants to look for in terms of its behavior. So it's a useful frame. Going back to your question, Chris, I must say I wouldn't normally do timeouts when I'm doing the inquiry. I think the inquiry is being curious and looking, unless they've specifically asked me to do that. I think it's a bit muddy. So I would always just observe and use the data in the overall development workshop, where I'm feeding back the rest of the data. And tomorrow, when we're doing we're taking you through an exercise for helping a team to identify its red and green behaviours. If you've got the team's behaviours, then of course, when you go into a business as usual meeting to observe them, you can use their own agreed behaviours to review them against, which obviously increases the engagement.
I mean, and just to clarify, I'm not sure if I've just to make sure I understood the question properly. You know, Chris, you said, would you toot when you're observing, or would you just observe? So we're talking here about being in the situation where you are observing, you're attending a business as usual meeting, so a meeting that they normally wouldn't have someone else in, but you've contracted for you to turn up and participate in the meeting as an observer, and your role as the observer is contracted
inquiry.
to toot.
But would you do it? Would you toot in the inquiry phase where you're observing a team?
Yeah, no, that's not. That's not what I was saying. I was just trying to answer Chris's question about where you're observing a business as usual meeting.
Yeah, is that answer, Chris, out there? Time out. Yes.
I'm aware that we've got 10 minutes, and I can feel an anxiety in myself about answering people's questions.
Is that because you feel that lots aren't answered yet, Moira?
Yes.
Okay. So my invitation is where you feel your question is on the brink of being answered but isn't answered yet, please shout out there. I must say, all this conversation about noticing and awareness, I'm finding it very frustrating that I can't see everyone's face. It's one of the problems with this mode of working. So one framework that helps me simplify the whole timeout territory is to use draw on John Heron's helping the client model of facilitation, because however way you put it, he talks about authoritative, the situation where the facilitator or team coach feels that they have knowledge or awareness that if they share it with the team will benefit. Authoritative. On the other hand, a situation, the facilitative, where the team coach, you feel that actually taking a time out and drawing on the awareness or wisdom of the team, that will actually be most helpful. So we're talking, you could reframe it in terms of push or pull. It's that kind of binary way of looking at the way in which we intervene. And for me, going back to this, what if I feel something? I think was it a Tracy question? What if I feel something, but I don't exactly know what to say? And so the old performance critic comes into my head, and I think I'm not going to make a very good time out here. If I don't know what to say, but I know there's something coming up for me, then I will go into the facilitative. You maybe say something like, I'm feeling uncomfortable. What's everyone else feeling? So it doesn't have to be perfectly formed. Anyway, let's look at the authoritative to start with. Heron talks about three different ways. Direction would be a bit like one of Peter's nudges. I suggest you first agree what success would look like, or I notice, you need to get this done in the next 20 minutes. Which of course overlaps with observation, which would be an informational thing. You have 20 minutes left, or I noticed that you said this some time ago, or you've got some information you could draw on here. You've got data from your 360 that you might incorporate into this conversation, would be maybe an observational piece. And then there's the holding up the mirror, or what John Heron would call confrontative, which isn't confrontational, but it is a mirror type of intervention. I notice that 3 people aren't participating. I notice that this conversation has been dominated by 2 people. I notice that that despite the fact you said you intended to do this in this way, the conversation is. Or I noticed that the customer hasn't been mentioned for the last hour. So it's really, really using all your tuned in experience to notice what's missing or what's notable that would hold a learning point for the client.
Hilary, using Jessica's language, which said, what's the difference between a toot and an intervention?
Yeah.
We say perhaps the authoritative is more of an intervention because it's, more based on a nudge.
I don't think so. I think what I'm talking about here is toots, but I think the difference between a toot, a timeout, and an intervention is that a timeout is is a time-bound intervention. So you're only doing this as a short intervention within a wider, I think it lends itself to the question of how do you keep it time-bound? That would be my distinction. But I think both timeouts are both authoritative and facilitative. But I think that the important thing is that when you're noticing these things, you're not noticing individuals. You are giving feedback on pattern. Remember the whole point about a team coach. We're there to coach the connections. So the question around what if you're pulling out, should we be challenging an individual? I would say no, you're challenging the dynamic in the team. You're holding up a mirror to the dynamic in the team. And so if someone is being particularly obstreperous, you might say, I'm wondering, how this conversation's going for everyone. You might say, I'm wondering how this has landed with what John has said has landed with the rest of the team. But you are not saying, I'm finding you aggressive, John, or Bert, or whatever his name is. So going on to the facilitative side of things, this is where you help the team think. You might take a time out and say, okay, so what could be a way of working that you haven't thought of yet? Or what do you see happening in the team right now? Let's take a pause. Let's stand back and say what we've noticed in the last 10 minutes has been going on. See, that is a firm intervention, a firm timeout, but it is not, I'm not bringing any answers of myself or any perceptions of myself. I'm merely opening up the doors for them to have a conversation. So I might say, let's take 5 minutes to share. Sorry, can we go up to the previous slide again, Neil?
Okay, just 3 minutes left on this
time. And then appreciating, I think we've covered. And then the last one, which is what Heron calls catalytic. This is an opportunity to help the team express emotion. So you might be noticing a silence, or you might be saying what's not being voiced, or I notice a tension in myself, or I notice an anxiety in myself. I wonder what others are feeling. Okay, so authority facilitative. Thank you. Another way of how else can I be listening, I think that was from you, Harriet, is to help to bring the outside in, obviously being systemic. How do we make sure we sit back in the way in which Neil was talking about earlier, absolutely tune into what our body's saying, what are we hearing, what are we sensing, and how do you remember this exercise we did with the thumbs, the wide angle perspective? How do we open our sight to the system beyond the team and maybe share something of what we're experiencing as an outside in intervention? I'm sensing the anxiety, which I sense is in the wider system, or inviting the team in a facilitative mode. If we were to stand back and look at the outside world, what might your stakeholders be saying if they heard this conversation? What might the board be saying? What might your customers say if they were hearing this conversation? Okay, move on. And so you can use the 5 disciplines as a framework for your types of toots. And this just gives you an example of a question using the 5 disciplines as a frame, which again help you to think, what might I say? And I think having these types of frameworks in my mind, I find it's easier then to formulate something which I think is value adding for the team. We'll move on because I think that speaks for itself, Neil, in the interest of time.
We're just into reflection here.
So shall we just turn the slides off? Where are we? We're on 20 past, aren't we? So we're just about at break time. What haven't we answered?
Well, I'm just conscious of a question that really stands out for me is about, how do you give a meaningful toot when you've only got a few seconds and maybe you're at the end of the meeting? And, my thought on that is you may choose to hold that and discuss it at a later stage. You know, if there isn't time to do it properly, you may well have to be quite choiceful about the toots that you give.
And since we have one of those moments right now, we could maybe try one and see what happens. What do you reckon?
Go then.
So my it's a question toot. It's not a positive or a negative toot, and it is since the session, this part started from 9:40 where we had the questions and then we had a piece of input, is, you know, what have you noticed about us as a group and what have you learned from what you noticed? And maybe just invite 2 people to share 1 sentence each. What have you noticed and what have you learned from what you noticed over that period of time? Just to us as a group working together. So think about it for 10 seconds and then just let's have a couple of people share. And we can include Hilary and Neil in that as well.
I noticed the question of positive versus negative came up quite a lot from different people in different ways.
And you're learning from that, Andrew?
My assumption from that is that it resonated with people and it was something that was important. The group.
Thank you.
I noticed more on to be mindfulness and body awareness. I noticed that we had this also in our small group.
And any learning or conclusion from that, Mayasi?
I beg your pardon?
Any learning from that observation?
Yeah, I learned that the more we are aware on the body language and also on the mindfulness, I think it will be much easier to come in and put up the toot.
Thank you. And there was a question earlier on, can you do a toot on a toot? Who was that? Who said that? Was that Andrew?
That was me. I was sort of joking.
How do you think that toot worked, Andrew?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it potentially opens up a big rabbit hole before the break, but I thought it was good, actually.
Okay.
And quite quick.
Super. So thanks for that toot on my toot.
Thank you, John. And I think the thing that occurred to me was a slight paradox of feeling we had to get through loads, and yet it should have felt a little bit more easier given the subject matter that we were talking about.
Yeah, can I just quickly ask something on that, Hilary? Sorry, because I'm noticing I'm feeling a bit anxious and a bit rushed, and I worry that's how a team is going to feel when you time bound something that opens up what could be a really significant learning moment for them, and then somehow you close it down and do what? I'm just noticing that I'm feeling a bit, and you know, putting people on the spot to think about what they've noticed in the last 10 minutes. Sometimes those reflections come after, so. How are you managing all those different people's responses to thinking in the moment, people that aren't as, you know, comfortable to do that, or losing the reflection completely for some people because you're time bounding it?
So I think you have, what's really important is you have to work out the context, you know, what you're managing here, what kind of meeting it is, how busy they are, what the pressure is to get things done. And then you have to work out how to intervene according to that. So if you know, if you know that it's valuable to take this time out, then but you also know that you can only give it 5 minutes, then you have to focus the question. So for example, you might, if you know it's 5 minutes, you might say, let's go round and say one thing that you're valuing, but one way in which you can increase the value of this meeting. So you keep it very much more focused. If it's something major, then I guess you have to make a judgment as to whether this is something you raise in an offsite, which is not so time bound. I think that's the judgment.
I'm just noticing that a timeout could be a real catalyst for a much more important and different conversation potentially.
Yes, absolutely. So then you have to contract about when that conversation will take place.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Can I offer something on this?
Yes, please.
Sometimes the most powerful thing is with a toot or an intervention is just that the team begin to notice something. And this is like building on Tim Galway's in a game stuff, right? Sometimes, even if it's the last minute, to draw the team's attention and just ask them to do nothing but continue to notice when X happens. When they then come back, they can have a really rich conversation about what they've been noticing, and that's something, you know.
which I think is important in that, you know, one thing I was going to say is that pause, actually introducing pause, even if it's just 2 minutes for everyone to stop speaking and to reflect and to, as you say, Chris, notice what they're noticing. It can be a transformational intervention for a team. A number of teams I'm working with at the moment, just for introducing pause into their meetings, have changed completely the way in which they're working, because they get off the treadmill of rushing and start to think much more openly.
I think as much as anything, just about, you know, more often than not, a team isn't sitting down and thinking about how are we behaving, you know, how of what's happening in the meeting. And by tooting, even perhaps more than the content of the toot, introducing those moments where you're inviting people to step back and take a bit more of a meta view of what they're doing, that alone is quite a radical shift for a lot of teams.
Yeah, and I think that takes us to the point of belief. I think we have to remember that by being someone who's external to the team, however closely we might be engaged with them, we bring a different perspective, and that different perspective, if we share, will have value. We have to believe that, because if we don't believe that, then we're going to stay reticent about actually doing this. So however simple, and I would say if you're not used to taking timeouts, keep them really simple, and just get into the habit of doing it. They will provide value to the team because they're not used to standing back and seeing themselves through others' eyes, or even seeing themselves through their own eyes standing back. So we have to believe we bring value from that perspective. And for me, one of the best ways of doing that is to do our outside in, future back, which is like the foundational gospel of systemic team coaching. Yeah, how relevant is this to the strategy that you agreed last week? Yeah, simple question. Oh, right, or whatever. Okay.
Do we have time? Can I add one more comment?
One more question. Yeah.
No, not a question, but a comment, if I may. And actually, in certain cases, this is one gift as a coach we leave the team with after we are away from the system, which is a very easy intervention. If they really embrace this and see the benefits of it, then actually they keep on, well, not maybe in the name of a toot, but they keep on reflecting, maybe at the end of their meeting, but how were we today? You know, how were, not maybe in the moment sometimes, but they take this so that the system keeps being intelligent about itself. And that's sort of, you know, some of
critical
the
part of core learning.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
And critical part of transitioning and helping the team help handle their own process after we've departed. Absolutely. Really important point. Thanks, Yap and Chat. Okay, so we're having a break now.
I suggest 10 minutes, which takes us 5 minutes over the schedule, but we need a 10-minute break. So back at...
Okay for everyone? Okay.
So see you at 22, everyone.
You might want to pause recording, guys.
Good toot.
Oh yeah.
And one helpful thought is, if there's something in the system, it'll always come up again.
Yeah.
You'll get another opportunity. So I don't worry too much about missing an opportunity, because I know
Yeah.
we'll always get another one.
So John, it's not like a Columbo moment when you get to the door and you turn back and say, oh, excuse me, I was just wondering.
I quite often do that, yeah.
I've just restarted the recording.
And sometimes you can create the opportunity again by opening up the conversation later on about, let's go back to that point and help people to recollect.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can waste our own time by saying, oh, I missed it. And then while you're beating yourself up for that, you're missing something else.
Missing another one.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I wonder what we'd drink if coffee didn't exist, or tea, in fact. Maybe some people aren't having coffee.
John, just thinking aloud as well, is how do you know if you've missed a good tweet? Because if you've missed it, you wouldn't know if it's a good tweet. So I think that just talks to your idea of it's a lost opportunity, whether that's good or bad, and another opportunity will inevitably come along.
Yeah.
So, David, do you do it by tweet then? You take technology into the room?
Did I say tweet then?
You did.
Yes. You just tweet the team.
Sorry, no, I stopped being an owl and started being a little sparrow or something.
For me, it also ties in a little bit with a sense of responsibility, which I'm thinking about myself, and not feeling too over responsible that you have to do it at the right time. The right time will happen, and not giving yourself that hard time about what you think your responsibility is for their learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and their capacity, it might be 2 good toots that get them thinking is really helpful. And if you said everything that you could say, you might be overburdening their capacity to actually hear it and get on with their meeting, and, whether they feel safe enough or overly analyzed. I mean, there's all those kind of contextual judgments to make.
I like the Robin Showhead quote, "Be present. Help may or may not arrive."
So talking about presence, is everyone back?
Seems to be.
Yeah, we probably are.
I think Sally has left and is due back at about 10:45. Am I right? I don't see Sally, do I?
Moira, I'm getting a lot of crackle and interference on your mic. Is that just me, or are other people hearing that as well?
Same.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm having internet problems today. Okay.
Don't worry.
It's the fuzzy carpet.
Yeah, the static electricity from that new shag pile.
Claire's not back, it appears.
Okay, so let's ease ourselves in then to the next session. And as John said, there are certain aspects of these 2 days that they're exercises that we were really hoping against hope that we would do this in the room in etc. venues, Bonhill Place, or Bonhill House. But here we are remotely, and so this gives us an opportunity to experiment with doing a sculpt for our whole community using mural. But let's just talk for a minute about what we call the floating team sculpt. So in terms of sculpting work on this program, we've used the swimming pool sculpt, if you remember, where we were inviting you to put yourself in a position, in a state of mind where you're at a swimming pool, and to go to the place in that pool that spoke to your sense of self-development as a systemic team coach. And that, of course, is a very individually focused thing, and we can invite you to do that on Zoom in your own rooms. But it didn't say anything about the relationships between us. And actually, I remember when we did that exercise in the certificate program, I remember Suzanne, are you there? Suzanne's not here. Suzanne, I remember her saying, well, you can't tell anything about our relationships by doing this exercise. And that's absolutely true. It's purely a personal exercise. And you might make some judgments about relativity and where people are, but you can't interpret for them. Whereas the floating team sculpt is very much one where we feel the need to help the team look at its relationships or its connections. And we use the physical world to help them see that in a new and potentially fresh and enriching way. So can I ask you, how many people here use relational sculpts in this way to help the team look at its connections between each other? I saw Alex. Yeah, in chat. And how many of you have done this on using technology as well? And how do you find it, Alex? What's good, what's helpful and what's not helpful?
Depending on the technology used, it can become messy. So a bit of introduction for the people on how to engage with the technology and feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But then once it gets going, it's very useful because you have a bit of a oversight that everyone can see at the same time. And it can open up very good conversations. I think what I also find challenging is the fact that people get drawn into the technology, and then you're either looking at that and then you need to flick between the platform and seeing people on the screen. There are workarounds, but they're not ideal, and they're not well integrated, these solutions, like to have a platform like a mural integrated with Zoom so that you don't need to flick between different things. So though it's useful, it does have its downsides as well, but at least you can do it.
Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, any other experience to share before we get going? Because we're going to experiment with doing just that for this community. So.
And with that in mind, I think it's, we played around with this and worked out what we think is the best way we can work out to do it, but that doesn't mean to say it is the best way. This is kind of based on a certain amount of experimentation and us thinking this might work. So there may well be learnings that come out of this about better ways that we come up with as a group to do this going forward. So treat it as as an experiment.
Yeah, so we need all of those gifts of mischievousness and fun and creativity in this. But let's also, when we do an exercise, let's really try it for real first. So what I call both feet in, we're going to look at to create a sculpt of our community, our learning community. And then afterwards, we'll take some time and say, so how did this work? Okay, ready to be a bit experimental? So let me just, Neil, to start with, shall I just say a few words about the process and then I'll hand over to you.
Okie doke.
So we're going to be trying to be deft, keep up our deftness, Moira, in the double act. So a couple of slides here, and I think I've probably covered, a floating team sculpt to help people get out of their heads and into their feelings. So often if I use something like this, it's quite instinctive. I don't often necessarily plan ahead. It may be that we've done some work on purpose, and I really want them to, I want to help them get from their heads into a felt sense of their relationship with each other and with their team purpose. So it's kind of standing up or standing back and helping the team create a new, release a new energy. So useful to use when the team is stuck or indeed exhausted by a certain way of working, helps to free up unspoken things. And we're going to look at the unspoken again tomorrow in a different method, new levels of awareness in terms of relationships within the team. But you can, of course, use this type of sculpt when you start to look at how the team relates to the outside world, but that's a slightly different angle on this. So releasing new eyes. So there's some tips here, which I think we'll come back to, but one of the most important things that you help the team to slow down and pause and invite experimentation, explain why we're doing what we do. And I'll come back to the other tips at the end of this exercise. So what we are going to be doing is a collective sculpt. So no one person is doing this, rather it emerges, the sculpt emerges as we notice the movement of others, and then we settle. And so the first thing that we do is to, am I okay to carry on, Neil, or do you want to talk technology now? Just checking.
Well, before we ask anyone to actually do anything, then I think we'll just take 2 minutes quickly demoing the platform, which I can do. So
yeah. Okay, just really quickly then, what we do if we're in the room, we ask people to find an object which just says something to their sense of the heart of this learning community. So people often go through the tables around the side of the room or their bags or briefcases or whatever, and come find something that represents this learning community, and we create a mini sculpture. So we're going to try and do a virtual version of that, and then we invite you in silence to move around and to find a place that feels right for you in relation to this montage in the center of the room and each other. And then we as facilitators go around and ask you to speak to a sentence. In this position in the system, I notice and I feel. And once we've allowed everyone to have a go, then we can do a sort of helicopter view of the system, and then invite some more movement in reflection on what we've heard everyone say is their experience. And then you can do a wash up, obviously, at the end. So that's broadly what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to hand over to Neil to help us get into the technology.
okay, so I'm sharing.
Stop share.
Yeah, so I'm sharing the mural board now. So we're going to be using the same one that we sent out as a link beforehand, and I've popped that link also into the chat, so you can cut and paste that link into your browser if needs be. So loads of functionality on this, but I'm just going to talk you through 3 things that you need to know for this exercise. One is when you go into the link, remember a mural board is huge, and you're often only going to be working in a corner of it. So the viewer down in the bottom right is showing you the large box is the whole board, and the little pink box currently up in the top left corner is the bit that we're actually seeing at the moment. So what I suggest you do throughout this exercise is to view the whole board. So if you click on the slider up here, you can move that backwards and forwards, which means you're zooming in and out. So if you move the little circle along to the minus or just click on the minus, you get a whole view of it. If you click the box again, it will expand it. And then using your mouse or your trackpad, you can move that into a spot that you can sort of see it clearly. So because if we were in a room, we'd be looking around the whole room to plot our space. We can, if you see the whole thing, then you can orient yourself in the room. We've added just a couple of lines here. So we've got a line around the outside. So let's pretend that's the wall of our room. So there's actually a sort of inside and outside the room. And we've got a circle in the middle, which is where we would ask people to put their objects, and in this case we're going to ask you to put pictures in. So the first activity will be putting a picture. So we've got the little picture icon on the left hand side that says image when you mouse over it. When you click that, you can search for an image. It will bring up a selection.
Does that say cat?
I put cat and it's got buildings. So
that's really good demo, isn't it?
And you simply need to click on the image that you want and then drag it into the middle. So that's it for the first bit. Click out of that.
Neil, I just wonder, should we take stock of how many people are on the board now? Because I can only see about 8. Ah, I see. I see.
14 people currently.
Great.
I need the link. Is the link in the chat already?
Yes, it's in the chat.
It's in the chat, Sally, yeah.
Oh, I don't seeing that.
I see wild horses appearing on the board.
You might need to scroll up a bit, Sally.
So I'm just going to request a pause here.
Either, yeah.
10:39, Sally.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Neil, can we just have a little facilitators timeout? So can I just check, are we just experimenting with that and then we will start for real?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to talk through it, but people are playing around with it, so that's fine. But choose to stop playing around, and I'll whiteboard so that people can start to add things when you start to talk people through it. Okay, so this is just a quick technical demo.
Yeah, great.
I think I've only got the chat to 11. Yeah.
Have you got it now, Sally?
No, because I jumped off to get on another call, so I've lost the previous chat.
I just reposted it, Sally.
Oh, thank you. Perfect. Thanks, John.
Can I ask how people are doing it? Do you divide the screens when you are on it? Do you have two screens?
Are you sorry? Who are you asking that question?
Neil. So for you, so I have my browser open, and at the same time, I want to see you with your.
Yeah. So this is, as Alex was saying, because it's not integrated. That's the other thing we're going to have to bear in mind. Like when you need to add something to Mural, you need to go into your web browser where you open it up, and then you add it. Add your picture or add your name. Yeah. And then come back ideally to the Zoom room where I'll be sharing the screen as I am now, so we can all see the same view as we're then Hilary will be talking us through the rest of the exercise.
So would you do half screens for both of them on your computer? Like you would half both of them visually?
You could as a viewer, you could, you could divide your screen so you're seeing the Zoom in one half and you've got your window open in the other half. That's a good idea.
Can I add as a short piece of input? I have found a workaround to be able to see people and see the board at the same time, but it only works for Mac users.
Yeah.
And I'll put it in the chat. The solution is called Circles for Zoom. Oh. And what that does is to build up sort of round icon snapshots of the people who are in the call. They can be the team members, and just sits as an overlay on top of the other windows so that you don't have to flick through between different windows. You will have this, but clients most probably won't, so it doesn't really help too much. But as a facilitator, you'll be able to both see faces and the board at the same time.
Thanks, Alex.
No worries.
So Hilary, should I just quickly describe how to add your sticky note as well? And then that can be the end of the technical demo.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Okay, so I put in the guide, how to add text, etc. We think the simplest way, actually, when we're going to ask you to add your name, is to add a sticky note, and not to do it using the left-hand navigation. But if you can see where my cursor is now, you'll be looking around the room, deciding where you want to go. Say if I decided I wanted to be up here in the top right, if you just double-click in that space, it will create a sticky note. So you can make that sticky note a bit bigger, and then you get a little dialog box up, which allows you to, as soon as you create it, you can type your name into it, and you've got a big A and a little a, so you can increase or decrease the font size so that it's easily legible on the full screen. So that's just the easiest way. Double click where you want your post-it, and double click it and immediately type and increase the font size. But just remember that, and then I think when we're ready to start in earnest, I'll wipe the board and Hilary will start talking us through this step by step. Any questions?
Yeah, just to be clear again on this screen stuff, I've got it open behind. I'm looking at Zoom now. I need to now go straight onto the board and not see any of you. Is that correct? Because I'm not a Mac user.
Yes, I think for most of us at this point in time, when you need to add something, your picture, or at a separate stage when we ask you to add your name, come out, minimize Zoom, look at it on your web browser, add your image or whatever you're asked to add, and then come back into Zoom and we'll look at it on the shared screen so that we're all seeing the same thing simultaneously.
And when I'm seeing it, when I'm doing that, am I seeing everyone else? I can see people moving around. Will I see all these pictures and things when I go onto the shared? I will, won't I?
Well, you could,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, because I'll keep the same view open.
Thank you.
And I mean, and if you've got that view, you can of course stick with that. But just in case people have zoomed in, it's kind of good if we're all looking at the same thing.
So can I just ask, is anyone completely stuck and not in anywhere with this? Please
I'm
shout.
not.
Step by
I'm
step.
not. I would say I'm a bit stuck with this. Yeah.
Where are you on the board, Robert?
I have a separate screen which says Neil's Sculpt, which I can put a picture on, which I'll put a garden picture on. But when I go on to look where everyone else is, mine seems to be stuck in the top left-hand corner. I can't move it with everybody else.
It's stuck in the top left-hand corner. You say you can't move it around.
Yeah.
If you click on it, you should get a set of boxes above it with a zoom. Yeah. And if you click on the cross arrows on the top left, it says move. So you may find if you click on that, that it's then easier to move it around. You might have accidentally locked it into position.
I don't know how I've done that. Let's go.
Or is it to do with zooming in and out of the screen?
I'm going between two screens. So.
Is it that I can see the top left outside the box that looks like that might be Robert's? It's actually outside of the box. Yeah, somebody's there hovering over it now. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so that it is movable. Robert, you might be looking at the shared screen in Zoom.
Yes.
Rather than, so you won't be able to move the shared screen in Zoom because you're looking at my screen. This is the bit where you need to go back into your internet browser where you've got it open up, and then you'll be able to drag it around. Yeah, there you go.
Right, but I can't see anybody else's at the minute.
I think you might need to zoom out. You got your bottom right hand little
yeah,
the plus and the minus sign. Can you zoom?
Oh yeah, I've got it to the minus now. Yeah, hang on a sec.
Can you see the rest of the screen now if you zoom right out down to the minus?
Onto the minus, I can see. Yeah, I can drag it over. So now if I click on the picture, still can't move it. I'm actually moving the whole thing now.
There we go. Someone's moving that now.
I'm moving you.
Someone's moving me, I'm not moving it.
I'm moving you for some reason. I don't know how I could do it.
No, I don't know why I can't do it. So if I click up,
yeah. No, somebody else is moving you.
No, that was me, sorry.
Right, I've done it now. I've got it now. I think that's me moving it.
So if your view just changed, I've just changed the settings, so you should all be seeing the zoomed out version that I've got. So,
right,
Alex, you seem to be enjoying everyone's pain.
I'm only laughing because I went through this in the past. I'm like, oh man, I've literally been through the same.
Yeah, there's no getting away from the fact it takes a few minutes to get your head around.
But we'll get there.
Alex, I remember our pack from last time when we tried.
Is anyone else completely lost before we start the exercise proper?
Hilary, I'm not lost, but my Internet Explorer isn't supporting it because we use Miro. But I have done this exercise in the room with you guys, so I can learn and observe.
Okay, thanks, Sally. Anybody else? Right, okay.
Sally, I can add something on your behalf if you want. So we could.
A pair of glasses. And I'm sitting on the line of the circle.
But we're going to start afresh,
Yeah.
aren't we, Neil?
So I'm now just going to wipe everything everyone's put on it, and then Hilary's going to start taking us through the exercise step by step. Okay, so if we can all stop tinkering for a moment.
So I'm going to invite you all to sit back from your screens, please. And you might need to close your eyes for a minute, just to take the focus off the screens, either Zoom or Mural. And bring your attention to your breath. Notice the cool air in and the warm air going out of your nose. And notice how your body is right now, right from your feet, the base of your feet, the bases of your feet, right through your legs, right through your sitting bones, right through your stomach and chest, right up to the top of your head. And just allow your attention to go out to this learning community. You can get a sense of people involved in this exercise right now, the human beings around the world. And your sense of the connections with this community, the connections within the community. What's it like for you to be here with these 25 people? And what comes up for you as you pay your attention to this community? If you think in colors, what color comes up? If you think in flavors or smells or sights, what comes up for you as you think about this learning community? So I'd like you to take 2 more breaths. And then bring your attention to the screen in front of you. And you need to be on your browser. So the first thing for us to do is to create a montage in this circle of images that speak to us as individuals. What is the heart of this community? So as you played before, you go over to your to the images icon and type in just something that speaks to the heart of this community, this learning community for you, and drag it over into the center. And we're going to do this silently, okay? So without speaking. If you have a major technical issue, please shout. Otherwise, let's do this silently. If you find that you've got multiple images, then probably be helpful to delete one just to keep the board as uncluttered as possible.
Hilary, I cannot, when I go on the image and click on it, I cannot move any, because I wanted to put up a picture of the sun, but I cannot move it in. I cannot, when I press on the images, there's nothing happening.
If can you just drag it across? Does that work? If you click and hold the click down, drag it.
Are you on your browser, Mayazi, rather than the shared screen?
Okay.
You might be on the shared screen. So Chris, we're just, if you go over to the picture icon, and the invitation is to look for a picture that represents something of the learning community. What's the heart of this learning community for you? And then to bring your picture into this central circle, or as close to the central circle as you can.
And does anyone want me to them who isn't able to access?
Yeah, I think I'm having a problem. Maybe if you could just add me with the sun, like the rising sun or something like that.
Can you see my screen now, Mayasi?
Yes, I can, yeah.
So, shall I put rising sun, like a sunrise, or
maybe, yeah, sunset, maybe sunrise or sunset, doesn't matter.
Oh, that's strange.
Maybe sunshine. Yeah.
anyone in particular?
Just anything, maybe. We just feels the warmth.
Third one down here.
Yeah, that is fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else need to add an image for them?
Neil, just a pair of, you may have done it already, I can't see very well, a pair of glasses, eyeglasses. Anything, any of those is perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, pop that in the middle.
Thank you.
If you're able to drag, maybe Neil, you'd be able to drag the pictures into the center, the outliers.
I could do that.
Now, if you'd like to, on your own browser, you can increase the visibility and you can see what pictures everyone's put. So maybe we'll just take a moment or two just to look at the pictures without interpretation or judgment. Just look at the pictures people have placed that represent.
Can you remind us how we do that? Make it bigger.
So in the browser, down on your bottom right hand corner, you see a minus sign and a plus sign, Harriet. If you just press on the little blob.
Got it. Yep. Thank you.
Oh, there's horses.
I see some horses racing there.
My picture keeps disappearing.
If you look on the Zoom, I've zoomed into it, so hopefully you could see the pictures clearly there.
It's been moved several times. I don't know how it gets moved, and then it's gone.
So pick it again then, Harriet.
It was a pic. What? Get it? Go and find it again.
If you want to, yeah.
Oh, I'm in the wrong one. No, I'm not. Yes, I am.
Can you add video? Is this horses a video thing?
It looks like it. Is that Andreas? I'm only guessing.
Well, you can upload your own photos. So if you in advance of a session, you could put specific pictures or maybe GIFs in.
So are you on, Harriet?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. So are we ready for the next step? Neil, do you think?
Yep.
So everyone, as you look at this montage of our learning community, our invitation then is to bring yourselves into this picture. And as Neil said earlier, if you click on the screen and create a text box and write your name in the box. So the question is, where on this screen feels right as a position for you in relation to the montage? You might, resonate with certain aspects of the montage or with the collective, it's up to you. So in relation to the montage, where feels right, and in relation to each other, the other human beings in this community. So I would expect there's going to be a little bit of wandering about.
And when you've clicked on your post-it note, if it's not that legible, do increase the text size by pressing the large A sign several times.
How do I get to my browser?
If you just open up your internet, wherever you would normally, if you use Internet Explorer or Safari, whatever you normally do to view a web page, just click back into that.
Miles, you might need to press escape to minimize your existing Zoom screen so you can see the other icons.
Okay. Oh, okay.
You got it, yeah, Maisie?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did. Thank you.
Great. And notice as you are moving around, just be curious about how this is for you. You may have decided in your position, you may be uncertain, you may feel that you want to keep moving. Be curious about what's here, because I'm conscious that some names I can't see, so you might need to wander and then expand your view to see where you are and who's around you.
Andreas, it looks like you're hugging us all.
And of course, as you know, there is no right or wrong in terms of position. It's just what feels right at the moment, at this point in time for you. Okay. So I'm conscious there's a couple of people still moving, and also conscious of our time. So wherever you settle is fine, and we can move again. You might decide that you're in constant motion. So should we do a, should we go to the next stage, Neil?
Yeah.
So I was going to move, I've got my own little bar here, but you've reduced it in size, haven't you? Is that right?
Yes, if you're looking at my shared screen on Zoom, I've zoomed into it so we can see everyone, but it's a bit easier to read names and see where people are in relation to each other.
Okay.
I'm also pressing, if you're looking at it on Zoom, I'm pressing something called summon. So hopefully that means you should be seeing the view that I've got here. So you'll get the zoomed in version.
So can you see my cursor? No.
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 If you click your own name down the bottom, Hilary, where it's got your initials, it should give you the option to show your cursor.
Yeah. It says it's on broadcast my cursor. Okay. Can you see it now?
No.
No, no. Oh well. Okay. So let me just try one thing. So if I use my box then, so I'm going to come round.
See it now, Hilary.
Yeah, thanks. You see my box going around. Okay, so I'm going to just inquire of you as to where you are in the system. So Andreas, what do you notice from this position in the system where you've placed yourself here? Are you there, Andreas?
He's on mute.
Are you on mute?
I have too much technology here. Sorry, I have 3 buttons where I can mute myself. Sorry. So first of all, I see there are some wild horses around me. That's lovely. I love this, to be with the wild horses. And so with the wild horses supervision group. Haven't had too many touch points recently. What I also see is there is so much on the right hand side. There's a whole bubble, and all the pictures, at least how I read them, all super positive. There, I see warmth. Now I make interpretations, of course, right? I see warmth. I see mutual support. I see light. I see traveling together. I see joy. yeah, intellects.
And how does it feel in this position in the system, the learning community system? You feel, what would be one word?
On the periphery and still included. That's how I would phrase it.
Thank you. Thanks, Andreas.
Thank you.
So moving round to Harriet. Harriet, so in this position in the learning community, you notice, I notice.
I noticed I'm on mute. I noticed that I, like Andreas, are close to my fellow galloping horses. And I think what I also notice is it's reflecting my attempts the whole time to be looking in that, get your thumbs together, big picture, looking out at the picture of the group as well, which I find interesting. And I feel in the group as a whole, and not right in the middle of the group, but kind of part of the group and being held by the support structure of the group, in touch with it.
So the feeling is
real appreciation and growth.
Thank you. And I'm going to try and get next to Ian. Ian, so in this position in the system, you notice?
Like Hilary, I noticed I was on mute. What do I notice? Yeah, I noticed I'd moved to the periphery a little. And my picture actually went right in the center. And why is that? And what I'm noticing is the relationships I'm building with different people. Hilary and I have built quite a relationship.
Did you call me Harriet?
Sorry, Harriet, yes. Sorry, Harriet. Yeah, it's an age thing. And yet there's such a richness in the whole montage there that, do you know, I'm noticing a tiny bit of sadness that I'm not reaching out to get into the middle of that Indian meal there with all of those different flavors, the spiciness, the fruitiness, the mix that is there, where there's even more learning and joy to be had. I'm noticing that, and I'm noticing a lot of warmth and love in the middle of that, of everywhere around you. I find that quite touching.
Lovely.
And I'm seeing the growth. I'm seeing the growth stuff there as well.
Lovely. Thank you. And Robert, in this position in the learning community system, I notice.
I'm particularly noticing the colour, I think, from the community and the open, so the sort of looking up in the sky and the different sort of perspectives that it brings. I think that really comes through to me looking at that. And I put a picture of a garden in, and I think I sort of noticed that there's quite a few others linked to trees and gardening and vegetables. So as the word sort of growth comes to mind. I think somewhere there's some stepping stones, so thinking about taking steps forward.
And you feel?
I feel very much part of the community, perhaps on the edge of it, but still very much part of it and linked in. And I could notice that I'm around some of the supervision group members, but it really is the colour and the vibrancy of it that really speaks volumes to me.
Thank you. So, Brian, in this position in the learning community system, you notice?
So I notice that I'm around my supervision group. I notice there's quite a distance to some other people, and again, I'm feeling maybe a regret of not having had the time maybe to connect with some other people. I was just reflecting that there are a couple of people I haven't really spent any time with, so I'm noticing that. I put myself on the kind of border of being kind of in systemic team coaching and not quite. So I think I'm kind of getting it and moving into it, but I still feel I'm very much kind of learning it. And I chose to be near the kind of tree image and my image, which was the kind of candles and the kind of light in the darkness that's around. I was really looking forward to this morning.
And you feel?
I feel good about that, actually. I feel like I'm growing in the kind of ways that I want to, and it hasn't necessarily been an easy journey, but I feel much more comfortable with it, and there's still work to do.
Great. Thank you. So I think Mayasi is here. Are you there, Mayasi?
Yes, I am.
So from this position, I notice
that I'm very close to my supervision group. And at the same time, I feel the warmth of the people around me. And I feel very curious too. So basically, I'm just happy and thankful to be part of the team.
Great, thank you. And I think that's it. Suzanne.
Yep.
From this position.
Yeah, so I noticed that I moved towards the pictures of nature. So I was just drawn to them, but also I'm in my saplings group. So I also noticed that I'm away from the other cohorts, but I think that's just, what happens. So I feel very supportive and cared for in my learning in the cohort saplings. And I feel that I'm getting a much deeper connection with that group. But the more I get a deeper connection in that group, so the less connection I get from the rest of the groups. And I think that's just the normal sort of the virtual learning of being closer to your cohort. So that's it for me.
And you feel from this place?
Oh, I just feel I feel supported and cared for in the cohort of the saplings group. Yep.
Great, thank you. And Mihaela. As you notice?
I noticed that I'm close to some of my colleagues from the supervision group. I chose to be there due to the greenery and the plants and the flowers, which for me represents learning and desire to be. I'm also noticing that I'm across the most of my colleagues. And in terms of feeling, I'm feeling in a curious, still growing, continuous growing stance at this moment.
Thank you. And oops, now I've reduced myself. Yapinchak.
So I notice that I am also close to my group saplings, but that was not intentional. I didn't pay attention to the other people, but it's a lovely coincidence because I do feel closer to them. Yeah, having, known them much better now. But that's totally coincidence. I was more drawn to the support and the sunshine in a way, that positivity, that energy. What I'm noticing about the overall maybe collage, I would say there's a lot of warmth color, and variety. Those are the three things I'm noticing. And I'm also noticing the different colors, shapes, and sizes of Post-its. And I wonder, you know, that's our skill set in this mural, you know, on a sort of very fast learning course. But what I feel is one step in, one step out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out of this cohort. And for me, it's like a never ending journey, because I'm sort of coming from the other cohort. And it says something to maybe evolving into that systemic thinking as well. So that's what I was thinking, that never endingness of this journey, literally. And then what does it say metaphorically to me?
And
So
of course, you experienced this exercise in the room with the
yes,
other.
yes. So it's very rich actually for me, because I see it in very different shapes, forms, and with, you know, double the size of a participant in terms of how many people I see and see interact. So
Yeah,
very rich.
All right, so you're noticing that, yes,
The richness, the never-endingness, and the richness of the journey.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. So, so now I'm moving, and I feel I'm moving the whole scale. So I'm going to try and go up here. Right, here we go. Andrew. Andrew, from this position, you notice what?
So I noticed that our supervision group is less tight or close than the others. I noticed that.
Yeah. Okay.
I noticed that the whole group is drawn to the center, and to me, there's a need for space. It feels very close and almost on top of each other.
So what's the feeling there, Andrew?
It's like a feeling of needing to create distance and space. It's almost like a protection. Yeah.
And so from the position that you've landed in, how does that feel?
It feels good. It feels fine. It brings up for me, you know, to what extent do I need to make more connections and come closer? Yeah.
And what's your sense of what that might be like?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I do think there's some element of self-protection there. So yeah. It's like it would be difficult, and I'm not quite sure why.
Okay. Well, maybe that's something you could try in the next
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah.
And Tracy, from this position, I notice.
I notice the separation from the community, although that's not why I put myself here, but I notice it obviously visually looking at it. And I feel okay about that, because I feel, but actually it's interesting hearing Andrew. I popped myself next to Andrew deliberately. I knew I was on the out, it's further away, but I wanted to be close to someone in my supervision group. So I did latch on to Andrew, but it could have been anyone else, but actually Vic's much more in the circle. So I noticed that it was definitely about staying back. Slightly different reasons to Andrew, which is I'm feeling, and I have felt all the way through, in not a bad way, but the learning is quite overwhelming. It's quite profound, and actually getting right in that thick of it, I think I would find quite even more overwhelming in an unhelpful way. So this, I think, is about me sort of trying to create space in my own mind, probably as well. Yeah.
And so from where you've landed, how does that feel for you, Tracy?
It feels, this is probably not the answer you're looking, it feels like I'm recognizing that I'm feeling. And it's really not a feeling answer. I'm feeling like I'm in my head is what I want to say.
Oh, right.
So, which is not a feeling at all, is it? Yeah, but that is, I can't really sum it up any better than that, Hilary, sorry.
You feel that you're in your head?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't. So I feel like I'm not feeling it. I feel like I'm thinking it, not feeling it.
Oh, okay. So I might ask you, you don't have to answer. If you were to feel it, if you were to go with your body rather than your head, I wonder what difference that might make.
Yeah, actually that feels quite anxious. I don't want to move into the circle at this point, no.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm feeling quite safe where I am.
Lovely, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Jessica? In this position?
Yeah, I noticed that I'm quite close to some of my supervision members, and at the same time, some of these members are far away. I think that maybe really represent also where we are at the stage now, with 2 people not feeling well. So it's going a little bit up and down there.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I found it difficult to place myself because I have personal ties with members from different supervision groups, and feels like what's the place for me? I'm a bit clueless there. So I feel regret. Yeah, I feel regret about that I see some supervision groups very close, and I would wish that for our supervision group also, to be there all the time, and I feel we have it up on and off. So yeah, that's where I am.
So I'm curious as to what it would be like if you were to say that to them, or maybe you already just have.
I said, yeah, many times.
Thank you. And Claire, what do you notice?
So
Position.
I noticed that I can't write my name. That's one thing. And it feels cold behind me, and I'm doing my best to lean in. And the irony is, with all that's going on, physical geographical location has got no bearing on this, but maybe I'm making it up that it has a little bit. I'm noticing that my supervision buddies stand out there, and I want to be more in there in terms of in the circle, because I'm on the it's semi-permeable, but I'm on the edge. But I don't mean I'm on the edge, I mean on the edge of the circle.
Yeah, and that feels
a little bit frustrating, and it's definitely a parallel between the way things are with teams for me in terms of moving forward with team coaching.
Okay, so maybe we'll experiment with a little bit of movement in a minute, and I'm moving the whole lot again. That's interesting. I find it difficult to now move my square without moving the whole montage. So let me just come down next to Deborah. What do you notice in this position?
I'm noticing, having come back and listened to everybody else, I think I've done it wrong. I'm noticing in the position, I'm noticing I'm in the centre, and I think with a combination of losing my internet connection a few times this morning and being distracted with the kids, I've missed some instructions. So I didn't necessarily intend at all to place myself in the centre of the group, if that's what we're doing. So I was drawn to the tree, and I was drawn to the Indian chutneys. That's why I put myself there. So I answered the question of what images resonated for me more than where are you in the group. So
Okay.
I've probably done it wrong. Having said that, it is what it is. I'm there now. I feel a bit uncomfortable being there because I don't think I'd have put myself there.
Uncomfortable because?
I don't feel like I'm in the center of the group. That's why. But I chose those images for what they meant to me before I perhaps didn't hear the question.
Okay, so I'll invite you to have a chance to move in a minute and see what happens there. Thank you. Inna, what do you notice?
Well, I'm noticing that, keeping in mind that we have got a huge mural board. We are just a tiny speck on it, like a tiny speck on the board of the universe. And at the same time, we are tightly closed. And I also noticed that I'm happy, Deb, I don't know, you are saying that you are here accidentally, but I'm happy to be very close to you and Alex, and I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety that Claire and Jan, we are far apart, you're a little bit away. I also noticed that we are extremely diverse, and I feel gratitude for that. We've got so many different colors and so many different images here. At the same time, I'm feeling this huge gratitude, because with all the turbulence and injustice that's going on in my country right now, I feel like I'm in the community, not at the edges, but in the community of people with likewise mindsets, with empathetic, kind, individualist, strategist, action logic people. And I'm really happy to be there. That's what I'm feeling.
Thanks, Inna. Thanks for bringing the wider system in. Thank you. So, who am I next to here? Can't see your name.
Alex?
Is it? Oh, Alex. Yeah. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
Oh, Alex.
There's another blank next to us, Hillary.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
So
from the position, Alex, what do you notice?
I notice some clustering. I notice some distance in between us. I'm also noticing a lot of natural elements that I'm drawn to in terms of the images there: fruit and veggies and spices and flowers and greenery and weather elements and such. I'm feeling quite drawn towards that. I'm feeling part of the circle, even though in the way that I've positioned myself there, it kind of looks like I'm probably sort of at the outskirts, but I definitely feel part of the circle in the community. I feel connected to peers, and especially people in the supervision group, but not just them, to many in the group actually. And like others, I feel that I'm kind of missing out on opportunities to connect with more of us. I definitely feel comfortable and supported.
Great, thank you, Alex. And oh no, move that. So, Chris, what do you notice in this position? What do you notice?
I notice a lot of space around, and I'm curious what's in the space. And then I notice a lot of condensing around, but not inside the circle, on the edges of the circle all around.
Mm.
And I noticed how difficult it was for me to find a place. And then I started just kind of moving my thing all around the board, hoping that I'd get the same sort of sensory feeling that I do if I'm walking around a room, but I didn't. And then I found myself here because I felt the, well, I could see the kind of clustering energy of the wild horses, which is where,
yeah,
I feel most connected, and at the same time, I feel like I felt like I could have put myself a lot further out as well. So I feel very kind of connected and included there, but I also feel I'm kind of floating on the outskirts a bit more of this community, this journey in general, with just lots of other things pulling me in different directions. So I find I noticed that I'm struggling to be fully present, both with the kind of keeping up with things in the work that I should be doing on this, but also today I've struggled to feel fully present.
And any other feeling that goes with that, Chris?
Yeah, I think there's some sadness and some longing around you know, nearly a year on, that we still can't be together physically. And space is, I just have a feeling of also just feeling a bit like there's just not enough space, not in relation to this, but just in general, I'm feeling there's not enough space.
Yeah.
Which feels strange given that we are distancing in life these days.
Yeah, interesting paradox.
Yeah, just kind of mentally and energetically, I'm feeling not enough space.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chris. So I'm going to try and leap over to Davo, but I may not be able to. So Davo.
Thanks, Hilary. Thanks, Hilary. So, yeah, when I first put myself down, put my name on the map, I was in a very different position, and it was and I realised that it was. I noticed that it was very much about me, and then with your invitation was much more about the consideration of my interrelationship and my connection with the group. And at that point I started wandering around, and it was when I landed in sort of in the area that I am and realized that, perhaps a bit like Chris, that I was then surrounded by the wild horses. I thought, this feels embracing, it feels warm, it feels comfortable. And when I put myself literally between Chris, Jenny, and just above Tanya, I kind of felt I was just sort of nestled there. It just felt, I just found myself sinking into my chair. And at the same time, I also thought, I noticed that, and this was perhaps a thought, and then I got a very strong sensation in my legs, is that actually there's quite a lot of space up and to what is my left, which was really, really exciting, because that said, you know, when I'm ready, I can head off in that direction. So it wasn't a sense of being overly embraced, trapped, and kind of, you know, mothered or fathered. It was very much that kind of, you're part of this wonderful group, and when you're ready, off you go.
And that feels?
It feels exciting and very reflective.
Great.
Hopeful.
Thanks,
Hopeful, and I realised that connects with perhaps where I was right at the beginning of today.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. And Jenny?
I was immediately, when we were asked to do this, it was like, where are my fellow horses? It was a kind of an instinctive pull and draw to kind of connect really closely with them. So that made me feel, I guess on reflection, just incredibly supported in that space, and appreciative of them and what they represent for me. And then there was also this, I think why I'm more edging towards the center, was also then looking out into the middle of the circle and going, oh my goodness, there is so much wealth of talent and wisdom and big hearts in this wider group. And I felt myself really torn with the, okay, do you jump in, do you jump out, jump in, jump out? And there's a piece when I'm sitting in that, and I'm sitting on the edge going, do I dive in or do I dive out? And the thought of diving in feels quite overwhelming. And there's a little bit of, I guess, in my head where I kind of think, actually, I need to make a decision around that, and I need to make a decision around, what I'm doing and where I'm going. But it feels, if the word supported is kind of not just from my fellow wild horses, but from beyond. I know if I was to venture further into the circle, I feel like I would feel supported if I did that. So it's more of a question for me about what it is that I want. And that's where I'm netted out.
Lovely, thanks, Jenny. And Tanya?
Yeah, so what I notice is I was drawn to the wild horses movement, and as other people have said, a place of safety. I suppose thinking about the system, I kind of feel like it's quite far away, or it's quite big. I'm aware that the map actually feels quite large. So I noticed that I was drawn to a kind of a sense of interrelationships first, and then looking up and out. And I suppose I was really noticing how powerful an exercise it was and how emotional I felt as I moved my silly little Post-it around. And just, so I'm not happy with it covering up the horses. I don't like that, but I couldn't quite find my place.
Right.
But that brought up, it did bring up quite strong feelings, and I suppose it brings up quite a lot of questions for me around inclusion, exclusion, connection and distance, I suppose. And I'm noticing how surprised I am by some people's stories or their thoughts and feelings, and that the questions that arises for me. So there's something around well, yeah, an element of surprise and growth, maybe. I didn't notice the pictures at all, so that's interesting for me. I was drawn more about places and spaces and people. And so I feel close and distant. I feel connected and apart. I feel, a disconnect and a connect. There's a lot of dualities for me. Yeah.
Polarities. If there were a connecting feeling, what would that be?
I think the connecting feeling is one of, well, I mean, I chose the kind of knitted patchwork, I suppose, a knitting together, a coming together, a knitting together, a creating something together as a group of very different people.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you, Tanya. Now, is there anyone in this rich picture who hasn't spoken? Please shout.
I didn't. Sorry, I didn't get my name up there.
Oh, Sally.
Obviously. Yeah.
Sally. Where are you? You're not some. Where would you be if you were somewhere?
I'd be sitting on the, where you can see the line of the circle, sort of, I'd be sitting somewhere in the middle of that line. Yeah, somewhere exactly there. Yeah.
And from that place you notice?
I notice there's a cluster of people, a cluster of the team that are very close in the inner circle, and there's some outliers. That's what I notice.
Mm-hmm. And what do you notice about your connection?
So my connection is, I'm both sort of, I feel connected to the inner circle, and also I'm not, because I'm from the previous cohort, I don't feel like I'm in the inner circle, but I don't feel like I'm on the outer either. So I just notice that I can see in and out the circle.
Great. And a feeling, what does it feel like to be there?
It feels very comfortable. I feel privileged that I can see in and see a different team, another team, other connections. I can see out and know, from a previous cohort and previous work. So I feel comfortable. I feel privileged to be learning from everyone.
Great, thanks, Sally. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken? Just want to double check.
We didn't hear from Vic yet.
And I haven't spoken either, Juliana.
Thanks, Julia. Where is Vic? I can't see. Oh, Vic, you're there.
Charlie
Sorry.
Brown.
Sorry, Vic, you're in the peanuts. So, Vic, from your position, what do you notice?
So I noticed that I put my sticker on my own image, which is the Peanuts characters, and that I relate to the world through people and relationships. And it was the only image on there that's got the faces, that you can see the eyes, smiles, and they're hugging each other. And I very much feel aligned with the whole community of the circle.
Uh-huh.
I also feel the need to check in with my learning team, because I've heard lots of different things that are longing for a closer learning team, and actually there needs to be space in our togetherness. So that's something to take away from today, to check in with everyone.
And what's the feeling underpinning that, Vic?
It's the feeling concerned that everybody's okay, because everybody might be okay. And if not, what?
Yeah. Thank you. And Julia, do you have a
it's the dolphin right at the edge below.
Is that below Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, that's me.
And is that where you'd place yourself, Julia?
Pardon?
Is that where you'd place yourself?
Yeah. I feel at the edge, a little bit on the outskirts of the group and the learning community, but this image I chose reflects more my hope for the future, to come back to this joyous mode, like this dolphin. So yeah, I've had some difficult months behind, so
yeah, absolutely. And anything you particularly notice from your place there as you look at the whole system?
It's a bit crowded. And I feel more closer to the outsiders a little bit. However, I have to acknowledge that the supervision group is really great.
Great. Thank you. And I think Chris isn't with us. Is that right, Moira? Just checking.
Correct. Chris Hudson, yes, not here.
Yeah, Chris Hudson, yeah, okay. So I'm conscious, everyone, of time, it being 12:05, and we were heading for a break. I'd just like to, if we can, with everyone's agreement, just do two more things just to help you get a sense of how this would kind of develop. So the first thing I'd like to invite, and we would do if we were physically in the room, we might ask someone to stand on a chair and take a helicopter view of this. Now, of course, we have a helicopter view in front of our eyes in some senses, but I wonder whether if we were to really sit back from this picture, and we need to be clearly zoomed right out for this, I wonder if anyone would like, and to sort of with fuzzy eyes, I wonder whether anyone would just like to make an observation of what they see if they zoom right out of this picture. And any big 30,000 feet observations, please just speak.
It looks like Wales, and the heart still stands out.
Mm-hmm. Wales, W-A-L or W-H-A-L?
The country, yeah.
Oh, Wales, okay. Thanks, Claire.
When I look at it, through no glasses on and fuzzy eyes, to me, I have a blob in the middle, and then it looks like there are two arms going off to the left, and the yellow next yellow one down, like arms reaching out, which I rather like for the senses in the system, to reach out further.
I almost got a sense actually of a profile of a head when I was going fuzzy eyes, as if there was a full, we created a new human being between us, meta-human. Okay, so last step then, from your experience of this exercise, you may feel that actually you are moved to move one more time as far as this exercise is concerned. If you would like to move to a place that now feels right for you, just do that now and notice how it feels to be in a new position.
Something weird just happened to me. I thought I was moving my square. Oh, there it is. I've re-emerged.
Of course, as others move, then we find ourselves moving
Hidden.
again, don't we?
Yes, we get hidden behind somebody.
Okay.
I noticed some drawing is now going on. Are these linking lines? Ah, there's Jackie. Someone put Jackie in for us.
Yeah, I did.
Thanks, Claire. That's interesting. That actually made my legs tingle a bit.
Hilary, could you
Yeah,
please move the sunshine close to somewhere where the saplings is? Because I think Neil is the one that, okay.
Neil, can you move it up? Okay.
Sorry, that was me moving it, but I don't know where the saplings are. So Neil,
Right
take
on the
over.
bottom.
Down here.
Yeah, but more a little bit.
Do you want to be in their rays?
Yes, please.
Oh, I can feel the warmth. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to bring this to a close, I mean, we could go round a full round again, but I suggest we don't do that given time, and we probably need another short break and also some time to review the exercise. I suggest, why don't we can I just ask for a word from everyone? Just, I think, probably just say a word of how you're feeling right now in this position, the position you are now in. Now, this is going to be quite difficult because we can't see each other. Or shall we just, Neil, what do you think? Should we go away from the screen and back into Zoom and say a feeling?
I think it's quite handy to still see it, but I'm wondering if people have still got their video box up and can see people.
I can see.
So there are some comments going into chat, Hilary and Neil.
Oh, thank you.
That's a nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
So we've got braver, connected, balanced, united, closer, reassured, warm, connected, helicopter view in a different solar system, curious, holding, fascinated, with my people, overwhelmed with strong emotions and happy, warmer, something powerful having it read out. Thank you, Moira. I feel peaceful, wondering, safe where I am.
Lovely.
Thank you. And please take a moment to make a note of anything that you feel moved to do or say as a result of this exercise to contribute to yours and others' learning as this community moves forward in its different ways.
More courageous.
So I'm just going to give us 2 minutes pause for everyone to reflect on that experience and anything that you intend to do or say as a result.
Okay, so I suggest we stop sharing. Oh, this is an ongoing thing. I looked away and look what's going on. I think we should have a break. What do you think, guys?
Please.
And then come back in. What do you think? We haven't really had very much breaks, and we've got quite a long session here. Should we take 10, even though we're stopping at 1 o'clock?
I think we need 10 so people can have a proper comfort break.
Yeah. So back at 12:26, everybody. Thank you for your experimentation.
Stop recording.
One thing I forgot to say right at the beginning of that exercise is that in some ways, that exercise is like a big timeout. It's like a big timeout. I mean, it's clearly an intervention. We get into distinct, but it is about saying, okay, here we are, we're working as a learning community. Let's do something different to put new eyes on the way in which we're working. So, what questions? Any thoughts? Any observations? On how we apply it with teams? Any questions on that? Everyone's exhausted.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some other applications that you use this for, other than looking at the team and its relationships with each other. So, for example, its relationship to purpose, or for a team to use it to emerge a purpose, or to feel about how they're on purpose, or any other topic, like how is this team in relation to trust, and where do you put trust, and where do people stand around?
Yeah. I do quite often use it in terms of purpose. So that in that case, I would just put what they've agreed as their purpose in the middle of the room or the screen, and then ask them to position themselves in relation to the purpose and each other. If it's just purpose, I might do a lineup, but how much do they feel committed? 1 to 10 type of thing. But if it's in relation to the purpose and the rest of the team, I put purpose in the middle of the room. Anyone else?
One of the questions we had in our group, and I think it was in the chat as well, if you can maybe elaborate a little bit around what's the difference between sculpting and constellation, or are they?
Sculpt is where you are being yourself and you're positioning yourself in relation to others. Constellations is normally the use of other. The person leading the constellation asks you to represent. It's the use of representatives of others in a system. That's how I see the difference. So we're not actually being ourselves, we're representing someone else, but we're also at the same time tapping into our own awareness at every level, but we are representing somebody else. In Sculpt, we're asking people to be themselves.
Thank you, Lou.
Does that make sense to everyone? Is it how everyone else sees it? Yeah.
I feel there is a little bit of an overlap as well. Is there? There is. It's not clear cut between the two.
Well, I think one of the overlaps that I would see is if we were doing something like you know, in the shoes of exercise with stakeholders, and we might ask people to put themselves in the shoes of somebody else. We are in a way representing someone else. I think that might be one area of overlap. I don't know, what does everyone else think?
I was just going to say, I've done a constellation, like a paper constellation, where you are yourself in relationship to your team, your current state and future state, and then you look at the relationship and why are you so far or whatever, and then you go into action of what do you want to do about those relationships. So I've done a constellation in that way,
So you're,
with them being themselves.
You're using figures or objects.
Yeah, they can do it on the paper constellation, or you can do it on mural, same sort of thing.
I think I still call that a sculpt myself, because we are still representing ourselves in the object, rather than you're asking the team to, I don't know, represent their stakeholders, or if one of you brought a supervision case and you asked us to represent members of the team, but behave as if we were members of the team, that I would call a constellation.
Just to check my understanding, Hilary, it's a sculpt is where Jenny represents herself and I represent myself. Vic represents herself. A constellation is where I put myself where I think I am, and then I put Jenny where I think she is, and I put Vic where, so I kind of move.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm representing other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could be that you move them, but it could also be that you, as the case holder, just name who the representatives of the system are that you want to look at, and those representatives may place themselves tuning into that stakeholder. It could be either.
What did you? Thank you for that. What did you think about the experience of doing this on a screen as opposed to in a room? What was your sense of the relevance, effectiveness of it?
Hilary, it's me. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go, Tracy.
Okay. With a slightly cynical lens, I'm always very impressed with what everyone in this group comes up with, and I wonder how much that is by virtue of the work we are here to learn and the kind of work we do. So I'm always left wondering, doing it for real with a team, when you can't do it as viscerally as you can in the room, and you can physically feel how close or visibly or even see better how close or how far away you are from someone physically, that risk of it feeling a bit confusing, or where the tech just feels a bit clunky, even just so you lose some of the impact is what I'm wondering. I'll definitely give it a go, and I've tried some different things actually in Zoom and using the whiteboard and stuff, and we're a large group. That's the other thing that I noticed. So it was large, it was busy,
yeah,
a lot of people to get round, so it could feel quite different in a smaller, more intact team as well.
Yeah.
So I'm left wondering about things, but definitely not put off doing it.
Yeah, this was definitely a very big group to do this.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, can I just add, I had a slightly different take on it. I think there was a point, if you do it a very small group, then there may be a sense of vulnerability because it's so obvious from looking on it. But on the same time, I was wondering, by watching it happening on the board, for me, it felt like we are having a helicopter view as it happened. And I rather like that, because if you do it when you're in the room, I'm more aware of just where I am, and then I have to look where others are, as against having the overall view. But then I know I'm very visual, so it works to that as well for me. So I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it.
Can you say something?
Yeah, the thing I found difficult was the coming on and off the different screens and losing the connectivity with people's faces.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really tell whether someone was feeling frustrated, angry, everybody gets reduced to a post-it note on a board, and it's that disconnect. Although I found the exercise actually much more powerful, despite the fact that we were just little sticky squares on a screen.
Yeah, you're right, actually. And one thing I could have asked you is if you were to describe a posture that goes with that position, we might have got a bit more insight into people's body language. We missed body language and we missed expression.
Yeah.
So yeah, just thinking to myself, I could have brought more of that in potentially, although it would have felt less natural.
Or even asking us to stand up, maybe
Yeah.
even would have just, yeah.
Yeah, that might have made a difference. Yeah, interesting.
I was struck by, in terms of the differences from doing it at Bonhill to doing it here, I was struck by, or I was wondering about the degree to which people were influenced by the images, by the montage, as much as the relationships.
Yeah.
And they were moving towards images rather than towards people at times. That felt stronger here today than in the room.
Yes, the photographs had more meaning, I think.
Yeah.
Didn't they? Because it gave us much more choice on what to choose. Whereas if we're in the room, we've got pencils and rubbers and post-its and combs and things like that, which become much less significant as a montage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there is one hidden implication in this online work. When we are in the room, we are not moving each other, but here we can have someone moving your picture, moving your card, and then you feel like emotions rising. So I think we have to be very careful about that when we work with a team.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, it's 1:01, folks, and we are together again tomorrow morning. So I think probably it's time to say thank you so much for entering into this exercise, and we will see you in the morning.
Thank you.
Thank
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye. See you.
Bye.
Hilary, I was just going to say I'll join you as soon as I can tomorrow after my session.
Oh yeah, thanks, Robert.
Okay.
Hope it goes well.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this morning.
Cheers.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Neil, do you mind if I ask a really quick question to you, just a technical one? Have you bought a package of Mural, or is that just a free account you've been using?
That's free, but I think it's only free for a month.
For a while, yeah. Okay. Yeah, because there obviously are different facilitator packages that you could get. I've noticed when I looked. Okay, cool. I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah. I think we were advised. Was it someone advised us to get the consultants pack or something?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Oh, that was your colleague Moira.
Yeah.
Consultants pack.
Okay. Because Neil, when you sign in to that one you've done, and then you could add people, can't you? You can create private rooms. When I went into play last night, I could see that I created a private room, but I could see Vic in there because she'd invited me in. So I was really curious about how much was private and how much was visible to everyone. But today it looked very clean. So not what I was seeing when I was playing around yesterday.
Well, yeah, because I wiped it all down. But I guess if you had your own account, you could probably create your own separate space.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Thank you for today.
Thanks, Tracy.
All right. See you tomorrow. Bye.
See.
Thank you. Bye-bye.